Hey, what's going on, beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to hang out with me. I really appreciate it. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing a budget deck tech. This is for Omnath, Locus of Rage. Basically, I actually already have an Omnath deck, and I will list the video along with that deck that is not budget in the down bar below. I will also be listing this deck tech. It's also on my tapped out as well, so you can check it out. And basically, I really like to film these budget deck techs because it really pushes and challenges me to think about, like, how would I, if I was building this budget, like, what would I do? And so basically, this is around $65, $70 or so dollars, and I feel like you could definitely build this even cheaper than that, because my thought process behind this is, like, if you're someone who's been playing Magic, like, you could probably get a lot of these cards. I honestly think for even cheaper. The way that Tapped Out works is it links it with, I think, TCG Player and Card Kingdom. And I've noticed, I shop on TCG Player, and I've noticed that a couple of the cards I think are more expensive on Card Kingdom. And so, for example, some of these cards, like, I looked them up on TCG Player, and it was showing that it was like 25 cents, and on Card Kingdom it was like 50 cents. Now, that 25 cents might not sound like a huge difference, but, like, when you're doing this, those 25 cents matter, right? Because if I've got like 4 of those, that's an extra $1, and that adds on to our budget. I did also throw in a maybe board on here as well. And like I said, this is very manageable. Like, when I build these, this is just like the general idea, right? Like, that doesn't mean that you have to buy every single one of these cards. Some of these you might already have in your collection. So that's kind of where my thought process was there. I did, like I said, I will list all of those things in the down bar below, and I think we're just going to get started, and we'll start talking about with the lands. Let me move myself a little bit. There we go. Okay, let's first start talking about the lands. So kept it pretty simple. I wanted to run a solid amount of basics. We've got our mountains and our forests, of course, and I wanted to run a couple of specialty lands that are going to help you get there. And also, like I said, I'm not going to be going through like every single card because, like, a lot of these are really basic and they do the same thing, especially when we get to the sorceries. So yeah. Okay, we've got like Ash Barrens, basic land cycling, which seems good. Blighted Woodland, I really like. I run this in my Omnath deck because you can sacrifice this to get 2 lands, and they enter the battlefield top with their basics, of course. Bonder's Enclave is a little bit on the pricey side. If you can see, the prices are there. However, I really like this card a lot because you can draw a card. You can only activate it if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, but that's super easy to do in Omnath because not only does Omnath trigger this, but all of your tokens do as well. I run, these are the new Capenna lands. I've got Cabaret Courtyard in here, and there's another one I think that I threw. Yeah, Riveteer's Outlook. These are really cool because you can tutor, they enter the battlefield, you get the Omnath trigger, and then you get another land, so you get 2 Omnath triggers, and you gain a life out of it, which is really cool. So I also threw in Cinderglade. These, again, this is not like an essential thing or whatever. Like, I just ran this because it was both types. I also have Evolving Wilds, and very similarly to that, I've got Terramorphic Expanse. These are really inexpensive and they're really great because you get the double Omnath trigger off of them. I always like to run like 1 land disruption card in my commander decks, and I really like Field of Ruin because not only does it destroy, but you do get lands from, like, everybody gets a land, and so you get another Omnath trigger, which is great. I also threw in a Gruul Turf. It's the bounce land. Again, get that extra trigger. Myriad Landscape I really love. And then we've got one of the hideaway lands. I threw the red one in here, very inexpensive card, and you basically get this card for free if you've done 7 or more damage. You could also throw the green one in there. I forgot the name of that one, but you could also throw that in there as well. So let's just, I think, go down to artifacts. We've got Hammer of Perforos, which is really, really cool because all your stuff gets haste. I also threw in, what is this card called? Fires of Yavimaya, which does the same thing. I also have Fervor that I think I threw down here, which is basically like the same thing in my maybe board, but these are all like the same thing. This one's expensive for some reason. I don't really know why. This one's like $6-7, and then Hammer is cheap. It's like $1.50, and then Fires is like the same cost. I personally run all 3 in my Omnath builds because I just really wanted haste. Seer Sundial is a pretty good card draw. I did want to make sure that we ran a couple of card draw things. There's like a ton of things that you could honestly run, and this has just got Landfall. I threw in a Soul Ring because, like, of course, and then I also threw in a Wayfarer's Bauble. Again, this and literally all of the things that get you lands, you could just run anything. Like, that's kind of the cool part about this build is you can, like, just because I have Farseek on here and you don't own a Farseek and you don't want to buy a Farseek because it's $1.80, you don't have to. You could run anything. So I've got a couple on here that are a little bit expensive, and then I have a couple on here like, what's like a really good example? Like this card, Farm Renderings, is literally cents, you know? Moving on to instance, I've got Harrow. Again, this one is really cheap. I also don't have, one thing I will say about this build is I don't have any graveyard recursion of lands in here. I actually don't have that in my Omnath build, and I honestly don't think you need it. Like, you could do that if you totally wanted to. If you wanted to run like ways of recurring back, I think this is just a more streamlined, easy version to do that in. And then I think you're getting a little bit more expensive because then you're running cards like Titania, Rune Card of Excavator, all that sort of stuff. So I just figured let's keep it simple for this. I threw in a Naturalize. It's Sense. It's a great thing to destroy target artifact or enchantment. There's a ton of things that you could run. There's like Destructive Revelry, which I didn't throw in here, but there's like a ton of cards that you could run. Another Mana Acceleration. Then I've got Thrill of Possibility, which helps you draw cards. This is another Mana Acceleration card, so I'm not really going to go over through those because, like, again, it will be this inevitable, and all these cards like basically do the same thing. Running into enchantments, I first have Court of Bounty, and I really like this card a lot. And something that I think is really cool about this card is, first off, finish the battlefield, you become the monarch, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a land from your hand into the battlefield. Now, that's really cool, and even if you're not, if you're the monarch, you can put a creature or a land, but even if you're not the monarch, you can just put a land into your hand. Onto the battlefield. Paul actually has this in Ashaya, and it is so incredibly good, and it's really not that expensive. You can get it for like $1. Fires, we already talked about. Goblin Bombardment is really cool. It is like $2 or so, but I really love this card because someone blows up the board, and what's really cool about this is whenever where elemental tokens die, with Omnath and with Goblin Bombardment, you actually get you can do 4 damage, which is really, really cool. Because typically with Omnath, they're 3 damage, but with Goblin Bombardment, it's 4 damage, which is really cool. And it's a free sack outlet, which is really great. So someone threatens to exile the board or something, you're like, cool, sacrifice, whatever. Not that that would matter for your tokens, because they're going to die either way, but if you have some of your elemental creatures, Into the Wilds, I thought was pretty cool. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you can just put it onto the battlefield, which I thought was pretty cool. Colony Heart Expedition. We got Warstorm Surge and Where Ancients Tread. These cards are very similar. I don't necessarily think you need both. You can absolutely run both. I ran both in my Omnath build for a really long time, and I think I took out Warstorm Surge in favor of Where Ancients Tread. You could run one, you could run the other, you could run neither, whatever. I would recommend running at least one of them, though, because they're really good. Basically, whenever an elemental deal comes into play, you can do damage with that. So this one is 5, and you could deal it to creature or player, so you can just, whenever you have that elemental enter the battlefield, you just get 5 damage, which is really cool. With Warstorm Surge, this one is based on its power. So if you're noticing, we actually do run a handful of creatures. We have the same amount of creatures as sorceries. So you can definitely have quite a bit of damage with Warstorm Surge. Okay, speaking of, let's chat about creatures. We've got really basic things like Arbor Elf. Very similarly to that, we have Elvish Mystic. That's also going to help us. We have this card, Finn. I don't know how to say that. Elves, we've got like things like that. Burnish Chart, really simple. Courser is a little bit on the pricier side, but I would definitely recommend, it's like $3.50, but I would definitely recommend throwing it in there because you can reveal. So if you like your top of your library, so if you've got no lands in your hands, which seems pretty like it shouldn't happen, but it definitely can happen. You can pull that card from the top, and then whenever you have lands enter, you gain life. Elvish Rejuvenator is enter the battlefield, look at the top 5. You can put a land from among them. Again, this is just kind of like, you could throw that in there. Ewit, because my thought process is you're having a ton of stuff go to the graveyard, grab one of your things back and cast it again. Do you need it? No, but it's a good card. Farhaven Elf, very simple. Similar to that, we've got Wood Elves. Fertilid is cool. It's also an elemental, so this will trigger when it dies off of Omnath, which is really cool. Then we've got, let's see, this card is really cool. This is Goblin and Narcomancer. This card is new to me, actually. It says each spell that's red or green costs 1 less to cast, which is literally your entire deck. So all your stuff basically costs 1 less, which is really, really cool. I really like this card a lot. Green Warden of Marassa is if you don't want to spend the money on an Eternal Witness because it is, $2 or so. Green Warden is a cheaper alternative cost-wise, and this is a double Eternal Witness because it enters the battlefield and you get something back. And when it dies, you can choose to exile it and you get another thing back from your graveyard to your hand. I definitely recommend throwing Green Warden in this deck. And when it's an elemental, so when it dies, you do get your trigger off of Omnath. Llanowar Elves is basic. Llanowar Scout is just putting a land from your hand onto the battlefield. It's also really inexpensive, it's only 2 mana. I wanted to also give you things to play additional lands, and Mina and Den is one of the things that helps you get there. One thing I also really like about Mina and Den that some of the others don't do is it gives you an option to bounce a land. So again, if you're in a situation where you have absolutely no lands in your hand, you're hellbent or whatever the situation is, this gives you a chance to bounce a land to your hand. You can get a chance to play that land again, and then you can give something trample. Great card. It is $1. I definitely recommend it though. Radha is similar to some cards that we've also been talking about, but you can play with the top card of your library revealed. It also has first strike if it's your turn, which is cool, and then you can get this +X+X. For me, the biggest thing with this is going to be the playing lands off the top of your library. Reclamation Sage, because again, we wanted a little bit of destruction. Steve, Sakura Tribuilder, again, this is a $2 card. I don't necessarily think you need to go run out and get this because there's plenty of things that do something similar, but I just threw it in there because it's a really good one. This card is called Spring Bloom Druid. I cannot say that word. ETBs, you can sack a land, and if you do search for 2, this is basically Harrow, but on a creature. We've got Thicket Crasher, which I thought this card was really cool. It says other elementals you control have trample, which is great. So those tokens you have are tramplers, which is great. Another mana acceleration, more mana acceleration, and then I've got Zerta because this card's really cool. You can just ping it to do damage to your opponents, which is great. So now we got our sorceries, which is our bulk of, I feel our deck. I mean, yes, we have our creatures, which we just chatted about. And like I said, so many of these do basically the same thing. I threw in a Boundless Realms because, to be honest with you guys, again, it's kind of similar to Courser where it's $350, but this card is so good. You got all your lands, you play your Boundless Realms, then you get all of those lands onto the battlefield. You get all your Omnath triggers. This card kills people. It's great. Broken Bond is really cool. You not only get to destroy artifact or enchantment, but you also can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield, which is really cool. So it's just a better naturalize, basically. Then again, this is where it all is the same, mana acceleration, you can play an additional land this turn, great card. Explosive Vegetation. I personally really love Fade into Antiquity. You've got a ton of artifact and enchantment hate in this deck, and you're also able to deal with so many of the creatures that they play, because with Omnath they're you got all your lightning bolts, and then you've got your Warstorm Surge and your Wear-Ancient Strut, so you basically can deal with a ton of different things. So you've got that going for you. Mana Acceleration, Harmonize. This is a really great, I was trying to think of a lot of card draw things that you could run that are cheaper. Harmonize is less than $1 and it's a great card. Mana Acceleration, Mana Acceleration, Mana Acceleration, Mana Acceleration. There we go. Regrowth, it gets you something from your graveyard to your hand, which is really cool. And it's only 2 mana. I really love Regrowth. Very inexpensive. It's a great card. Shamanic Revelation is absolutely wonderful because not only does it draw you cards, but if you've got that Ferocious, which is very easy to do, you're not going to get it with some of your cheaper cards over here, but you've got this, and then you can get a bunch of life for that. So even if you have 5 elementals, there you go, you just gain 20 life right there. So good. Mana Acceleration, I talked a little bit earlier about how you do want ways of getting multiple lands to play from your hand, and Summer Bloom is really great because it gets you 3 additional, so you can play 4 lands in a turn, which is great. Sylvan Scrying is as good as well, and then I've got a Tormenting Voice in there because it gets you to draw some cards. So, like I said, you've got a lot of room here. You can do a lot of different stuff with this, a lot of different things. I do want to jump into the maybe board because the reality of the situation is I could have put so many more cards in the maybe board. These were just the ones that like came to my head that I either have or I think could be really good additions if you're looking to spend a little bit more money. So first up, we have Augur of Autumn. This card's really cool. You can play lands from the top of your library and you can look at the top card anytime. If you have Coven, you can cast creature spells as well, which is really cool. Even if you don't have Coven though, because I've played with this card when I don't, this is really cool because you get the chance to look at the top card of your library and play lands from the top. It is $5. I think it's very much worth it though. We also have Azusa Lost but Seeking. She's about $10. Great card though. This is Summer Bloom, or a mini version of Summer Bloom because you can play an additional 2 lands, so you can play 3 lands per turn. Very, very good. Dryad of the Elusive Grove is expensive, but it is really, really great. You can play an additional land on each of your turns, and lands you control are every type. I also threw an Oracle of Moldiah in here. You know, it's about, let's see, it's about $7 or so, but it's great. Playing additional land is great, and you can also look at the top card. Tireless Tracker is also about $6, but I really, really love Tireless Tracker. Whenever you play a land, you get to investigate. When you sack a clue, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Like, here's my thing is you could build this deck, right? Build it for $40, build it for $50, whatever, and then buy a couple of these more expensive cards. Like, if you wanted to get a couple of these key cards, you know, you're looking at probably like 100 or so. We'll get to one of the more expensive cards in just a second. We got Beastmaster Ascension, which is awesome. It's so incredibly easy to get these quest counters on them and then give all your stuff +5/+5. Card kills people harder. It's kind of like a kill harder card. Do you need it? Absolutely no. Like if you were looking to spend like $5 on a card, I'd probably get one of these, you know. Doubling Season is one of the most expensive cards, but I did want to throw it out on here. This card just is always really expensive. To be honest with you, don't understand it. I feel like even as many times it gets reprinted. Do I think you need this card? No, but it does make your deck a lot better. You really see the difference with this. I also realized too I didn't throw Parallel Lives on here, but that's like similar. Getting those double tokens is also really good. I talked about Fervor earlier, and then I also wanted to talk to you guys about this card called Gratuitous Violence, which is if a creature would deal damage, it deals double that damage basically instead, which is great. So when you think about it, you know, if you got your elementals and you got that trample, that thing that gives all your stuff trample, and you play this, all those 5/5s now deal 10, which is ridiculous. So great card. I also threw in Beast Within because it's a really good removal spell, and then 3 visits for some reason just is $8. I don't really understand why, because there's really similar cards. I don't know if I actually threw Nature's Lore on here, but that's another card that you could also run. Like I said, all these cards do the same thing. And the last thing is Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. This card's really expensive. I do not think you need to run out and get this, but like I said, that's why I threw it on the maybe board, because it is expensive. Like if you were to be like, I want to get all of these for the price, just get all of these for the price of the Valakut if you're looking to spend a little bit more money, you know. But basically, once you get those additional mountains, they do, it's another lightning bolt on a stick. So, yeah, guys, that is it for this deck tech. Let me know in the future if you guys want me to stick to a certain budget. Let me know if you guys also like don't want me to include the maybe board because it's like too tempting or whatever. Let me know like if there's certain parameters or like build a deck under like $25 or like something like that crazy challenge. Let me know if you guys want me to do something like that. I think that would actually be really fun. Maybe like 30 or 35. I feel like 25 really hard. I have to really think about what I wanted to do, because to be honest with you, I thought that I could build this deck even cheaper, and I was finding it really hard because some of these cards, like I said, like Cultivate's like $1, and I was like, wait, what? I thought this card was like 25 cents. So there's like certain things that you could do. But I guess also too with this, I'm kind of also assuming like you might already have some of these cards in your collection. You know, if you're like brand new to Commander, I think that Omnath is a great commander to start with because it's so easy. This deck is like so easy to pilot. Like there's so much going on. Like your biggest struggle with this deck is probably going to be like, okay, my elemental dies, where do I do that 3 damage to? Or if you've got impact tremors, it deals 4, so that's cool. But yeah, guys, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what future budget deck techs you guys want me to do next. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel if you're not already, and I'll catch you in my next one.